Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Brief content of today's lecture that we will discuss perceptual organization, impression management, the process of impression management, employee impression management strategy. Very easy, and it is a small topic. Today our lecture is it will cover 10 to 12 minutes, and we will discuss about these topic. Perceptual organization. So far we have talked a lot about the sensation. Now we shift to perception. Our sense provide us with raw data about the external worlds, but it must then be interpreted. Perception involves decoding meaningful pattern in the jumble of sensory information, and it is the brain process of organizing and making sense of sensory information. Perception began with the real world object, which activities or sensory system we never experience to stimulate directly, but our perception is usually very accurate. So if you remember, in a previous class we have discussed about the sensation. Sensation is the process that allow our brain to take an information via our five senses, which can be experienced and interpreted by the brain. Sensation occur thanks to our five sensory system: vision, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. Sensation, if you remember, I have told sensation is referred to the process of sensing our environment through touch, taste, sight, sound, smell. This information is sent to our brain in a raw form where perception come into play. Perception is the way we interpret these sensations and therefore make sense of everything around us. The word sensory that we have discussed are the descriptive. They describe how we experience the world and how we smell, see, hear, feel, taste something. Words related to sight indicate color, shape, appearance. For instance, this was the previous lecture that we have discussed. So now, in the early 20th century, a group of German psychologists calling themselves Gestalt. So what is a psychology? Psychology is a separate subject, so here I will explain. Psychology is the combination of two words, psych and logos. Psychology studies the mental behavior of individuals. Psychology set out discovered the principle through which we interpret sensory information. Gestalt really translate to mean a whole. Gestalt means whole. From a pattern, they believe that our brain create coherent perceptual experience that is more than simply the sum of available sensory information, and that does not predictable way. So the example of Gestalt principle is the idea of grouping, or the perceptual tendency to organize, to motivate coherent group. There are four principles of perceptual organization: grouping, proximately, similarity, closure, connectedness, and continuity. These principles usually broaden our understanding of the words our brain tries to fill in missing information rather than seeing things are random in an environment. In a slide, I have write very clear to you, perceptual organization is the process of grouping photographic elements together, organization that one can more freely determine the meaning of visual as a whole. Perception. From perception can be any object that you receive meaning from, that can be any symbol that you receive meaning from, that we have discussed about the perception in a previous class in detail. So here the Gestalt psychologists argue that these principles exist because the man has a native disposition to perceive pattern and to stimulate based on a certain rules. These principles are organized into five categories that I have explained to you. These five categories is not in our course, and in next week it will not After midterm week number 9, we will discuss proximately, similarity, continuity, closure, and connectedness in detail. So now we will talk about the impression management. Impression management is originated by Irving Goffman in 1959, described a central aspect of a role theory. How individual actors create, maintain, and define social identities through assumption. Impression management is very important in development and maintenance of social relationship, and it is critically important to effectiveness as a leader, because success in a social relation is a success all leader require, and they make a balance. Impression management is used in a workplace for two common reasons: to achieve employment and achieve advancement. The most common reason for impression management in the workplace is to achieve employment at the company or a business. When we fail at the impression management, we follow different techniques, strategy, policy to re-establish or order, region, or identities. So this was about the impression management. Or impression management is aware of or impression management is aware of unintentional process in which people attempt to influence the perception of other people about a person, object, or event by regulating and controlling information in a social interaction. An example of impression management theory in play is in sports such as a soccer. Impression management strategy. So strategy, before the word strategy were used in a military word for enemy. So today strategy we use in a business for the competition. Strategy is the scope and direction of organization through which we can achieve organization goal effectively and efficiently. Strategy is for the survival of the business. So without strategy, business organization cannot alive. Strategy can be positive, strategy can be negative. So here, impression management strategy, there are two basic strategy of impression management that employee can use. If employee are trying to minimize responsibility for some negative event or to stay out a terrible, they may employ a demotion preventative strategy. On other hand, if they are seeking to maximize responsibility for a positive outcome or to look better than what they really are, then they use a promotion enhancing strategy. The demotion preventative strategy is characterized by the following activities. Employee attempt to excuse or justify their action. Employee apologize to the boss for some negative event. Employee secretly tell their boss that they have fought for their right things but were overlooked. Employees using this approach try to disassociate themselves from the group and from the problem. The promotion enhancing strategy involve the following activities. Employee harbor feeling that they have not been given a credit for a positive outcome. Employee point out that they did more but they receive less credit. Or employee identify critical personal or organization obstacle that they had in their workplace. So there are some technique as well of impression management which is not in our course, but try to find it. Technique of impression management is conformity, excuses, apologize, self-promotion, favor, association, opinion, conformity. Or let me explain to you peoples. Impression management is the process by which an individual attempts to control impression of other from them. So the technique of impression management is, the first one is conformity. Conformity means agreeing with someone else's opinion to gain his or her approval. The second is favor, doing something nice for someone to gain the person approval. Apologize, admitting responsibility for undesirable event in simultaneously seeking self-promotion, highlighting one quality and downplaying one's, and excuses, explanation of predicament, creating even aim at the minimizing the task, minimizing the severity, minimizing the surrounding activities and environment. So this was the technique of impression management, which is not included in our course. So for your general knowledge, if you could make understand more, so there was conformity, favors, apologize, self-promotion, and excuses. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can put it in WhatsApp, then I will answer, or you can email me